All rise. The District Court of San Andreas is now in session.
Let's not do it that way.
The Honorable Judge Ruby York presiding.
All right, folks, you may be seated at this time. Thank you for coming out to court today. Today, we are here for the State of San Andreas versus Michael Francesco. This is case number 21-18780. For the record, can I please get prosecution and defense to state their names?
Raiden Haugenson, District Attorney.
For the defense is Oliver Hall.
And is the defendant here today?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Haugenson, would you go ahead and read the charges, please?
The charges today, Your Honor, are PC 2302, possession of a Class 2 illegal firearm/weapon, and PC 3129, illegal possession of a Schedule 2 controlled substance.
And Mr. Hall, how does your defendant plead today?
Your Honor, Mr. Francesco pleads not guilty to all charges.
All right, it has been noted on the court docket here as not guilty. Okay, we will begin with opening statements. State Prosecutor, Mr. Haugenson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Honor. Okay. On October 27th of this year, a dispatch call was sent to all police as shown in Exhibit B1. This call told of a man with a Class 3 weapon in Rodger. Officers responded. The officers in question are called as witnesses today. The defendant, among a few others, was found in the location of the call. Exhibit C1 shows this. The officer's testimony will state that they had reasonable suspicion due to the nature of the call and the defendant and his associates being found in that location. Officers, for their own safety, they are within their own rights as police officers to frisk, commonly known as a Terry frisk, for weapons with reasonable suspicion, which they will state they had. Upon this frisk for weapons, a Class 2 illegal firearm was found. Exhibits A1 and A2 shows the weapon in the defendant's possession. The defendant was subsequently arrested and searched again. Not frisked this time. Shown in Exhibits A1 and A2, a Schedule 2 controlled substance was found. The defendant was ID'd after arrest by fingerprint, as shown in Exhibit D2, as Michael Francesco. We will prove through testimony and the evidence provided to the court that the defendant is guilty of all charges. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Haugenson. And Mr. Hall for defense?
No opening from the defense, Your Honor.
All right, so we will proceed. State Prosecutor, you're welcome to call your first witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The prosecution calls 590 Goteborg. Goteborg. Am I saying that right?
Nope, but it works.
I don't think anybody says it right.
Yeah, no one does.
No.
That's fine.
Just call him G, okay?
What the hell? All right.
Just if you just raise your hands over there to the bailiff, he's going to swear you in.
Raise your hand for me.
Oh wait.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
All right, you can turn around and hit the speaker.
Aye.
Thank you, sir.
May I approach, Ron?
Yes, of course.
Sorry, I'll be hobbling a bit. Oh, God. Okay, how are we doing? I'm gonna call you G if that's okay.
No way.
How do you actually say your name? Just matter of interest.
Goteborg.
Goteborg.
I mean, Michael works as well, but you know. Whatever.
Okay, we'll go with
Sure.
officer today.
All right.
So, officer, can you talk me through your account of October 27th?
Yes. So I was finishing processing in Mission Row. I went back to my vehicle and plugged into the radio system. At that point, we received a Class 3 call down on Bay City, near Bay City. Another unit already responded down there and was waiting for backup to arrive. I was the second unit on scene. We staged up and we then moved in on the exact call of the class 3. As soon as we rolled in, there were two cars there and at least 5 or 6 people standing outside the apartments. We approached them, we told them why we are down here, and basically told them that due to the fact that we got a class 3 call, we would like to frisk them for any weapons if they have any, and if they do not carry any firearms, they will be free to go. Everyone kinda took out their phone and Googled the first thing that came up and tried to be the smartest and the strongest. They kept refusing to work with us. They just were screaming, saying they live here, they have the right to be here, and a bunch of things that don't really matter to the case at all. After we got more backup, at least 5 or 6 officers, I started to detain one of the multiple suspects, which is going to be the defendant who is present today. I placed him in cuffs. I told him that he's being detained at the time for investigations due to me having reasonable suspicion, and that I'm going to frisk him down for my safety.
Object at this point due to narrative. This is far outside the scope of the question that was asked.
So the objection was for narrative and outside of the scope. What is your rebuttal, Mr. Hugginson?
Outside of the scope of what?
Well, no, it's
Of
outside of
the-
the scope of the question order. I objected
Yes.
basically on narrative.
I'm entitled to ask the man his side of the story.
The question that you asked was more based upon the actual, what happened on the day.
Okay. I will ask another question.
So the question was correct. Unfortunately, the scope was getting too wide.
I can narrow it down.
Okay.
Right,
Just
so-
re-ask the question, and your witness will re-answer.
Can you talk me through from the time you detained the defendant?
Sure. As soon as I detained the defendant, I told him that he's been detained for an investigation, and due to the fact that we have a 911 call, like a dispatch call of a class 3, that I'm going to be patting him down for any weapons. At this point, I took him to the side of my car. I frisked him down for any possible guns. I felt a large object. I asked him what it is. I don't remember what he said. I touched it a little bit further and felt a gun. I then took that object out of his possession. I also found, I believe, a fishing, what's it called? A fishing hook
Rod.
thingy. Rod, yes. As soon as I secured the firearm, I told him that he was under arrest. I read him his rights and I conducted a full search and placed the suspect in the car so we can focus on everyone else that was on scene.
Did you find anything else on him?
I would have to look at the exhibit, but I believe a
Please
ball of
do.
oxy. Yeah.
Please check the evidence that you supplied.
So as you can see in exhibit A1, there's the firearm, and there's also a bottle of oxycodone.
Okay.
That's everything I took on scene.
Okay. You said in your statement you had reasonable suspicion.
Yeah.
Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, so since we got a dispatch call of a class 3 on location, with the suspect being in the area of that class 3 call, I had reason to believe that he is involved, and therefore I had the reasonable suspicion to detain him for tariff risk and the investigation. And through the investigation, it turned out that he indeed was in possession of a Class 3 firearm. Or Class 2, yeah. Class 2, Class 3.
Can I just ask you a question about Exhibit C1, if you'd like to take a look at that one?
Yeah, what about?
Can you tell me what is shown in this photograph?
That picture was taken after everyone was detained. This is where we first made contact with the suspects outside, where there were cars parked, and like 5 or 6 individuals standing in the spot that was photographed.
Is that the location that was dispatched?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, officer. No further questions.
Mr. Hall?
Of course, permission to approach the witness, Your Honor.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, now, Officer Goteborg, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, in your testimony, you stated that you performed a frisk on the defendant. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, what was that frisk based off?
We had reason to believe. We had reason to have suspicion that the suspect was, involved in a crime. However, we detained him for investigation and conducted a tariff risk.
Now, previously in your testimony, you described being in Mission Row PD when you received the call for the Class 3, right?
Yeah.
All right. Now, from how long when you were at MRPD until you got to the defendant, or to when you saw the defendant, was it? Around how long was that spent? Time?
Maybe 20 seconds or so. I wasn't first on scene, but there was a unit there before me, so.
Right. So you're testifying it took you 20 seconds to get to MRPD, from MRPD until the scene?
Yeah, code 3 full standard, yeah, pretty much.
Okay. And you testified to waiting outside of the scene until more officers arrived. Is that right?
No.
You didn't?
No. As soon as I arrived, the primary and me, we moved in. Like a minute later, there was a total of like maybe 5 or 6 officers down there. But at that point, we already made contact with the individuals.
Okay, I got you. Now, can you describe the area that this scene was in?
It's an apartment complex.
Okay, so you'd agree that it's off of the main road in that area?
Yeah, it's off Bay City, yeah.
Okay. And you'd agree that there is a large array of docks around the area?
I mean, there's one docks, yeah.
Okay. And you stated that there were around 5 or 6 people around the apartments. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, were those people already outside of the apartments? Were they walking out of the apartments?
They were all standing in a circle, right next to the cars. So the cars were parked in the underpassage, and they were standing right next to it.
Okay. And did you see any of those individuals with firearms out?
No.
Okay. Now, when you walked up to the scene, did you see any casings on the ground?
No, because I didn't get a call for shots fired.
All right. Describe the call that you received.
Possession, like a brandishing of a Class 3 firearm.
Right. And you didn't see any individuals with a firearm out when you got there, right?
No.
Okay. But you saw more individuals around the scene, right? Other than those 5 to 6?
No.
Okay. So, were there individuals driving down the street before you got up to the apartment?
Wait, say again?
Were there individuals driving up and down the street before you got to the apartment?
Possible. I don't recall anyone leaving the scene in a hurry.
Well, that's not my question. My question is, did you see any vehicles that were driving up and down the street when you got to the apartment?
I don't recall.
Okay. All right, now who was the first individual that you made contact with out of the group?
No, no one specific. We approached the group as a
Objection,
whole.
Your Honor. Scope.
And your rebuttal?
First, Your Honor, the witness did testify to talking to the group and to specific individuals, including the defendant. I don't think it's out of bounds.
That is
I just don't see
correct.
how the order makes any difference, Your Honor.
The objection is overruled. The witness did say that there were 5 to 6 people standing outside by vehicles.
Do you need me to repeat the question?
No, like we approached the group as a whole. I didn't approach a single individual per se. So we talked to the group as a whole.
Okay. And at what point during that conversation did you specifically talk to the defendant?
As soon as we had multiple units on scene, I told my fellow officers that we should start detaining people and conducting our investigation. And the yellow defendant was the first one I grabbed, so yeah.
And you didn't see the defendant with a firearm out, did you?
Nope.
Okay. I'd like to go back to the call that you received. Can you go ahead and describe the call that you got?
It's a class 3 call.
Now, what does that mean?
That a citizen of the state called 911 concerned that they saw someone with a big gun in their hand, brandishing it or pointing it.
Okay, and you'd agree that that call was anonymous?
Objection, Your Honor. City limits.
I'm just asking.
So I'm going to sustain. The only reason why is that the witness did say a citizen of San Andreas, which is correct.
Sorry,
So-
you sustained the objection there?
Yes.
All right, so can you paraphrase exactly what the call stated?
Sure. let me
Objection,
look.
Your Honor. The call is in evidence.
Correct. The call is in evidence. However, your objection is overruled because we need an explanation. We are not police officers, whereas this man is, and he understands the dispatch calls. Mr. Hall.
Can you need me to repeat the question for you?
Nope. It says. Hold on.
I'm sorry, if you could recall from memory rather than referring to an exhibit, I haven't asked you to.
I mean, it just says no man with gun. It tells us the location, and that's pretty much it.
All right, now when you provided that answer, were you looking at the exhibit or were you recalling from memory?
I was looking at it.
Okay. All right. Now, did that call specify as to who exactly you were looking for, like a description of the individual?
No.
Oh, when you got there, did you specifically pull out the defendant as the individual that had the firearm? Or are you under the assumption that all individuals in the group had a firearm?
We detained the group as a whole. Like everyone that was present on scene was detained.
Okay. Now, specifically in this call, let me back up here. Did you receive one call or did you receive multiple?
As far as I believe, we only received one call.
Okay. So would you therefore agree that you're only looking for one person with a firearm?
No.
Why is that?
Because I mean, if there's multiple people standing there, and since we didn't have a description of the suspect, we needed to check everyone that was on the location of the call to verify that they weren't in possession of a firearm.
No, that's not what I'm asking. I can repeat the question if you'd like.
Sure.
Now, did the call specifically state that there was more than one individual with a firearm? Or did it specifically state that there was one individual with a firearm?
Our dispatchers don't tell us how many people are on scene. They just tell us what happened or what is happening.
Okay, so when you got to the scene, At the time, how many individuals with firearms were you looking for?
Unknown. I mean, like when I arrived on scene, I didn't know how many people were there until I actually were there.
Okay, so were you looking for an individual, more than one individual, or just one individual at that point?
When I responded to a call, it could have been one person, it could have been 500. I mean, like I said, our dispatcher doesn't notify us of how many possible suspects there are. It only
Okay.
tells us what's happening.
Do you agree that you and your officers, when you got to the scene, you were gonna frisk people randomly to try and find a firearm? Is that right?
No.
Okay. Was there a specific order that you went through when you detained and frisked people there?
Yeah, we detained the people who were on scene of the call. We didn't detain the whole block or the whole street.
No, that's not what I'm asking. So, your intentions when you got to the call were to detain everyone that you saw, and then frisk all of them. Is that right?
No, because when we arrive on scene, they could have brandished the firearms as well. Like, our goal is to go to the scene, see what's going on, investigate it, and then make no act on whatever evidence we have.
Okay. When you got to the scene, you'd agree that you detained all 6 individuals.
Objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered.
Your Honor, I'm not getting an answer to the question. That's why I'm asking. I don't think I've specifically phrased it this way.
Are you asking, just give me 1 second. Are you asking the witness how many people he detained, or as a whole, how many on the scene? Because it's a little confusing.
Well, yes, I'm asking specifically how many on the scene were detained by all officers there.
Okay, so I'm going to overrule the objection because I felt that the question was confusing.
First.
So if you would direct, or sorry, yeah, change your reword is what I'm looking for. Reword your question, please.
Okay. Do you need to repeat the question, Mr. Gilbert?
Yes.
All right. So when you got to the scene, how many individuals did you detain? Was it all 6, or was it just the defendant?
I verbally and my partner that was first on scene, we verbally detained all 6, but I only detained physically your defendant. Everyone else was handled by a different officer.
All right. Thank you. Okay. So you'd agree that at the point that you and the other officer detained all 6, you had intentions to frisk all of them. Is that right?
I had intention to frisk my suspect, yeah.
Okay. You'd agree that the intention was for all officers there to frisk all 6 individuals.
You have to ask the other ones. I don't know what their intention were.
Okay. At the point that you detained the defendant, or all 6 individuals rather, were you specifically looking to frisk the defendant, or did you pick someone at random?
I picked him first because he was the closest to me.
Okay. At that point, you had a hunch that he had a firearm on him, right?
It's not a hunch. I was able to reasonably articulate that I had reason to believe that the suspect was involved in the class recall.
Had you ever met this defendant before?
Nope.
Okay. Now, on the scene, did you look him up on the MDT?
No.
To your knowledge, at the time, did the defendant have a firearms license?
No. I
To your knowledge,
I didn't know if he had one.
to your knowledge, at the time when the frisk took place, that's what I'm gonna. Let me just rephrase this here. So going forward, I'm just gonna be asking you questions, that you would have potentially known at the time. If that makes sense, right? So at the time, did you or did you not know if the defendant was a convicted violent felon?
No.
Okay. And at the time, you didn't know whether or not he had a firearms license?
Nope.
All right. And at the time, did you see him with a firearm?
Nope.
And at the time, did he tell you had a firearm?
Nope.
Okay.
He was saying a lot, but not that.
Do you agree that you were solely basing your hunch that he had a firearm from this 911 call? Is that right?
I mean, it's not a hunch.
You'd agree that there is no other evidence that you can provide other than this 911 call that gave you the basis for your frisk, right?
Yeah, that's all I needed.
Okay. Now, can you describe exactly where on scene this group of 6 was?
As you can see in the photograph.
I'm sorry, which exhibit is it? Is this
Objection, Your Honor. This question has definitely been asked.
not by me, Your Honor.
This is asking exactly where they were standing.
Yeah, it's exhibit C1.
Now, were they standing on the property of the apartment or on the parking lot?
Somewhere, it's like somewhere on the sidewalk, somewhere standing on the road, since there were cars parked as well, so it was mixed.
Okay, when you specifically got there and you saw the defendant, where was he located at the very beginning?
I don't recall.
Okay, so was he on public or private property at that point?
I don't recall.
Okay, no further questions. Right?
Mr. Hugginson, did you want to redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Officer, in your expertise, when are you allowed to frisk a person?
Objection, improper expert opinion.
Yeah, this, so redirect cannot be a fresh question.
He was asked many times whether he had a reasonable suspicion. Your Honor.
He's asking a very technical question.
Oh,
What was asked.
I'm done.
Yeah, I don't blame
Oh.
you.
I'm going to ask that any more outbursts like that are contained and that we do not speak like that. This is very unprofessional. I'm going to be quite honest. So you may sit down. Thank you for giving your testimony today.
That's true. Thank you.
Prosecution, do you have another witness you'd like to call?
Yes, Your Honor. Whichever officer was there first. I don't know which one that was.
Dude, he's gonna cry.
Which officer was there first? Out of all of you?
I'm sorry, you talking to me?
Which officer was first? That's all I'm asking. Oh, okay. I'll just call you one by one. It's fine. I'll call 534 Rodger. Oh.
Mr. Rodger, if you're here, would you please come up and see the bailiff? Thank you.
No, did I just go up here as well? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
come
come
see the
over
bailiff.
here to the bailiff, please. Thank you.
Raise your hands for me. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony that you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Rodger. If you just come stand next to this nice big seat in the middle, and there should be a microphone right in front of you if you come a little closer.
Yeah.
Perfect. Mr. Harkinson.
Thank you, Your Honor. If I may approach.
Yes, of course.
Okay, Mr. Officer Rodger. Were you the first on scene?
Objection,
I was,
leading.
I was one of the last.
Can you tell me about your involvement on the...
Your Honor, I'd ask for the objection to be ruled on. There's an objection for leading.
Oh, I'm sorry. I could not hear you. Sorry,
Oh, okay.
Mr. Hall. All right. So the objection was leading, which is, do you have a rebuttal, Mr. Harkinson?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. So would you like to start over, Mr. Harkinson?
Officer, tell me about your involvement with the arrests on the 27th of October.
I was one of the last on scene, but I was there for the whole thing pretty much, and arrested one of the other suspects.
Why did you arrest the other suspect?
For the same reason, we had reason to believe that they had class 3s on them. So I pulled one of them aside, frisked them, and then felt a large weapon.
Did you have any dealings with the defendant?
No.
What was found on the suspect you dealt with?
Objection,
Uh,
relevant.
Mr. Hall, can you say that again, please?
Yeah, odds and objection on the basis of relevance. We're not here for the criminal trial of the other suspect. We're here for the criminal trial of the defendant.
Mr. Hugginson, rebuttal.
I was just getting a feel of the scene, Your Honor.
All right. So at this time, the objection is sustained. Ask you to move to another question or reword your question.
I'd like you to take a look at Exhibit C1.
Do you have that in front of you, sir, or do you need it airdrop to you?
Yeah, not at the moment.
All right. Mr. Hugginson, are you able to airdrop that to his phone?
I can try. I don't actually have his number, Your Honor.
It's 534 on Discordia if you wanna.
We in recess?
Hello.
There you go. I've sent you Exhibit C.
Yeah, that's it.
Can you tell me what you see in this photograph?
I see one vehicle parked on the street, and then on the right, where Goteborg standing, is where all the suspects were.
Okay, so can you state on there where the defendant was standing?
Defendant, I believe, was standing just like in the middle of the two doors and in front of it a little bit.
No further questions.
Mr. Hall?
Just a couple of questions, Your Honor. Permission to approach the reading?
Yes, of course.
All right, sorry. Can you state your first name again? So
Johnny.
All right, Johnny Rodger. Nice to meet you. All right, now you testified to where the defendant was standing. You
Mhm.
agree that you saw the defendant on the scene?
Yeah.
Okay. Now you'd agree that this is a private apartment complex, correct?
I'm not sure. I was just there. I'm honestly not sure if that's private property or.
Were you, or did you receive 911 call referencing a Class 3 firearm?
Yeah, we also received the call as well. That's why we responded.
Okay.
And we've heard that the
Now,
officers needed
I'm just
backup.
I'm gonna ask a couple other questions here. Now you stated that in this image, C1, the defendant was located in between the doors. Is that right?
Yeah.
All right. So you'd agree that he wasn't on the public parking lot.
Yeah.
Okay. Give me one moment. All right, now, were you one of the original officers that detained the first 6 on the scene?
Yeah, I arrested one of them. Yeah.
Okay. And you'd agree that that stop was made solely on the basis of the call that you received?
Basically, yeah.
Okay. You'd agree that you didn't see the defendant with a firearm out at the time?
No, no one was holding firearms at the time. No.
Okay. And you'd agree that you didn't see any remnants of a firearm when you first got there?
No.
Okay. And you'd agree that you didn't see anyone else? Let me try that question. You'd agree that you saw cars driving up and down the street when you got to the apartment, right?
No, I don't recall. I didn't see any cars go up or down. I just saw those that were parked.
Okay. You'd agree that there were other cars besides the 2 depicted in C1 that were...
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
And your rebuttal, sir.
I think it's highly relevant to discern who was and was not on the scene at the time. This is a stop on the basis of a 911 call in the area.
The objection is overruled at this time because I believe we are still looking at this exhibit.
All right, would you like me to repeat the question for you?
Yeah, please.
Okay. You agree that there were other cars in the area other than the 2 that are depicted in C1, is that right?
I do recall seeing more further up the park. But I didn't see. I don't recall or seeing anyone leaving the scene.
Okay. All right, I think that's all from me, Your Honor.
Mr. Hugginson, did you want to redirect your witness?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rodgers. You may be seated. Thank you for your testimony today. Mr. Hugginson, your next witness.
I would call Officer Steve Mckinstry.
Mr. Mckinstry, if you'd come up and see the bailiff, please.
Raise your hand for me, sir.
Your Honor, I need 30 seconds if possible.
Do you solemnly
Sure, we'll
swear
just
that
swear
the
him in.
testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I swear.
All right, Mr. McKinstry, come stand next to the chair. There should be a microphone in front of you. Ladies and gentlemen, just make sure you're eating, make sure you're drinking. And Mr. Hugginson is just thinking about something for 30 seconds. Hello, whoever's waving back there. Not sure who you are.
Apologies, Your Honor. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes, of course, the floor's yours.
Officer Mckinstry.
Yes.
Can you tell me about your involvement on the 27th of October?
Myself and 534 Johnny Rodger, we were the last to respond to that call. We were rolled in together. We've seen 6 individuals in the area of the Class 3 call. So then for our safety, for the officer's safety, and for reasonable suspicion, we detained each of them and frisked them for a Class 3, that being a large weapon. Myself, I frisked one male. He had no fire on him at all. He was then let go. Johnny Rodger, he frisked another male. He then arrested him for the Class 3. And 590 Goteborg. Sorry if I butchered that name. He had also arrested someone for a class 3.
Okay. No further questions.
Mr. Hall.
All right, Officer Mckinstry. Now you testified to responding to the call. You said that you responded last, is that right?
Yes, I responded alongside with Johnny Rodger.
Okay. Around how long after the other officers got to the scene did you arrive?
Not long, maybe 2 minutes at most.
Okay. And when you got to the scene, did you see the defendant?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And what was the defendant doing?
He was, if I can recall, he was on the phone to someone after he came out of an apartment. I may be mistaken, I don't recall 100%. But, he was on the phone to someone after he came out of the apartment, and, yeah, that's about it.
Okay. And when you got to the scene, you didn't see anyone running away, did you?
No, sir.
You agree that you didn't see anything suspicious going on when you got to the scene?
Not particularly, no.
Okay. And you'd agree that when you got to the scene, you didn't hear any officers asking for identification?
Could you repeat that? Sorry?
All right. When you got to the scene, you'd agree that you didn't hear any officer asking for identification?
There were officers asking for identification, I believe.
Okay. Were they asking the defendant?
From my knowledge, I believe so.
Okay. What was the defendant's response?
I believe at that point I had already had another male being detained. I had no involvement with any other of the individuals there.
Okay. Now, when you got to the scene, did you hear any officers asking whether or not they had any weapons on?
I don't recall.
Okay. Did you hear anyone state that they had a weapon on?
I don't recall.
Okay. Did you hear the defendant state he had a weapon on?
I don't recall.
Okay. Did you hear the defendant state that he had a firearms license?
I don't recall.
Did you hear the defendant state that he was a convicted violent felon?
No.
Okay. When you got to the scene, did you see anyone with a firearm in their hand?
Objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered.
I don't believe I asked that particular question. Man.
You did at the beginning.
Give me 1 second to read my notes. In my notes, I don't have that direct question. I have others about firearms, but not did he see when he arrived on scene. So overruled at this time. You may re-ask the question.
All right. Do you need me to re-ask the question for you, officer?
Yes.
All right. Now, when you got to the scene, did you see anyone with a firearm in their hand?
No.
Okay. Just give me one moment here. All right. Now, when you receive a brandishing class 3 call, is that what you got?
Yes, it was a class 3 call called in by an anonymous tip.
Okay. All right. Now, when you receive that call, at that point, you'd agree that you hypothesized that the individuals that you would find on scene would have a firearm.
Could you repeat that question?
Now, you'd agree that at the time that you received that call, when you got to the scene, you would have hypothesized that the individuals there would have had a firearm.
Once I got to the scene, I didn't expect to find any Class 3 firearm on any individuals.
Okay. So you'd agree that when you got to the scene, there was no reason for you to believe that anyone had a firearm on him. Is that right?
It's not that I had a reason to believe, it's that we had reasonable suspicion to frisk the individuals for officer safety for a Class 3 firearm.
Okay, but you'd agree that you just stated that the time that you received the call, you did not have a hypothesis that individuals on scene would have a firearm. Is that what you said?
Objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered. Badgering the witness.
No, he directly contradicted himself, Your Honor. I think clarification is necessary at this point.
Give me 1 second. I'm actually going to sustain the question. I feel that the questioning needs to be a little bit more simpler. They are confusing.
For sure.
Thank you.
I think that's going to be all from me right now, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mckinstry. Thank you for your testimony. You may sit down at this time. Mr. Hargensen, do you have any other witnesses?
I guess I won't redirect. I'll call another one.
Oh, I apologize. Did you want
It's
to
okay.
redirect, sir? Sorry.
No, it's nice to be asked sometimes.
Excuse me?
I was joking.
Interesting.
Dude just said tuck tail and run.
Officer 937 Rossi. If you're available.
Thank you, ma'am. Please come up and see the bailiff.
All right, raise your hand for me. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I swear.
All right, thank you, ma'am. If you'd come over here next to the big black chair and you'll see a microphone in front of you. Thank you, Mr. Hargensen.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Officer Russ, can you please take me through your involvement in the incident on the 27th of October?
Yep. We were patrolling the area and we received a call for a Class 3 firearm. We approached the area waiting for an unit to come with us. We arrived to the gentlemen that were together and started, started talking with them. Just trying to take over the situation. After that, one of the officers decided that were leading the scene decided to conduct a frisk on them, and I believe most of my partners have already said the rest. Sorry.
Did you frisk any individual at that point?
No, I was more presenting just backup.
Okay. Were you one of the first on scene?
I believe we were second or third on scene.
Okay. No further questions, John?
Mr. Hall,
Yes, sir.
may I approach?
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Now, can you state your full name again?
Sorry?
Sorry, can you just state your full name again for me?
Elena Rossi.
Apologize. All right, Officer Rossi. Now, you just stated that you weren't leading the scene, is that right?
Excuse me, can you talk a little bit slower? I apologize.
Sure, not a problem. You stated that you were not leading the scene at the time, is that right?
Yeah, I wasn't.
Okay. Investigate the scene.
Sorry?
Sure. I can clarify if you'd like. Now, when you got to the scene, did you at all search for evidence? I can clarify if you'd like.
If you might, please.
Sure. At any point, did you take any photographs of the scene?
No, as my main role there was just to present backup in case needed.
Okay, you can answer in a yes or no. Now, at any point, did you collect casings from the scene?
Nope.
At any point, did you collect DNA from the scene?
Nope.
Okay. At any point, did you frisk anyone on scene?
Nope.
Okay. And at any point, did you take a photograph of the defendant?
No.
Okay. Did you see any other officers on scene taking photograph?
Yep.
Okay. And would that?
Sorry,
Uh.
are you asking me to identify?
Oh yeah. Who was taking photographs?
At this point, I cannot recall. If I can recall officers with cameras, but I can't recall their names.
Okay. Gotcha.
I apologize, I'm very bad with names.
No, that's all right. That's all right. Right, now, when you got to the scene, were there officers already there?
Were the officers? Yes.
Okay. Do you recall who was already there?
Sorry?
Do you recall who was already there?
We rolled 3 units. We rolled 2 units together, and then another 2 units came. The names of the officers involved are stated in the incident. I don't remember them by heart.
Okay. Right, now, when you got to the scene, did you see the defendant?
Yes.
All right. What was the defendant doing?
He was standing towards other individuals
I'm sorry. Can you
in the parking lot. He was standing with the other individuals in the parking lot.
Okay. You'd agree that they weren't doing anything suspicious at the time, right? Officers?
What will be your definition of suspicious?
Did you perceive anyone on scene in the group of 6 to be acting suspicious? That's your definition. Whatever you perceive to be suspicious.
Yes.
Okay. What activity would you believe that they were doing that was suspicious?
Sorry.
Oh, that's right. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
All right. Now, you stated that the group of 6 individuals were acting suspicious. What specifically were they doing that you perceived to be suspicious?
Sorry, I will have to correct it. The word will be non-suspicious, so I will have to say no at this time.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Misunderstanding in language. I apologize.
That's all right. That's perfectly fine. You'd agree that the defendant, when you got there, wasn't running away from the scene, right?
No.
Right. He wasn't darting back and forth.
Excuse me, darting?
Yeah, he wasn't, say, running back and forth or running around.
No.
Is that right? Okay. All right, and you'd agree that you didn't see the defendant with a weapon at all, did you?
No, he wasn't brandishing it publicly at the moment when we arrived.
Okay. Now, on the scene, you'd agree that there wasn't any evidence or anything that you could discern as evidence to show that there was a firearm on the scene. All right.
Apart from the call, no.
All right. No further questions, sir.
Mr. Hargensen, did you want to redirect this witness?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your testimony and your time. You may be seated.
Yep.
Mr. Hargensen, did you want to call another witness?
I have one more, so why not? 5-0. Oh, what?
Can you ask for recess 1 minute?
Sorry, Your Honor. Can I have a recess for 1 minute?
We will be having a 1-minute yoga recess. Feel free to stand up and stretch.
All rise. District Court of San Andreas is back in session. Honorable Judge Ruby York presiding.
All right, folks. Court is back in session. You may be seated. Mr. Hargensen, you had one more.
I do not, Your Honor.
You do not. Okay. Is there anything else prosecution would like to bring to the court?
The fuck?
What up, with the light?
Apart from a closing statement, no, Your Honor.
For sure, for like 2 seconds, you
So does prosecution rest at
come
this
sit with me,
time?
bro.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Defense, Mr. Hall, do you have any witnesses or anything you'd like to bring to court at this time?
Give me one moment.
Sure.
All right, Doctor. No witnesses or evidence from the defendant.
All right. Do you need time to move forward to closing statements, gentlemen?
No, ma'am.
Defense should be prepared.
Okay. We'll proceed to closing statements at this time. State prosecution will go first. Mr. Hugginson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Honor. The testimony of the officers and the evidence provided to the court have proven that during a lawful frisk for weapons, for officers' safety, following the Class 3 weapon dispatch call, an illegal Class 2 weapon was found, as shown in Exhibits A1 and 2. The illegal Class 2 weapon is plain to see in the possession of the defendant. After arrest, Schedule 2 controlled substances were found to be in the defendant's possession, as again, testimony and Exhibits A1 and A2 plainly show. When officers receive a Class 3 weapon call, danger is always heightened, and the safety of our officers is always important. The ability to protect themselves out on the streets by performing what is now known as a Terry frisk is very important to officers. The reasonable suspicion was given to them by the dispatch call. A group of people standing in the exact location of the call gave them reasonable suspicion to perform this safety frisk. There can be no doubt of guilt. These items were found in the defendant's possession, shown clearly in evidence, and also in testimony. The court has to find the defendant guilty of all charges. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Hunginson. And Mr. Hall for defense.
Don't gotta do shit.
Of course, permission to approach, Your Honor.
Yes, of course.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, my friend's waiting to get in. He can't get through.
All right, Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen, and may it please the court. Now, in this case, mainly what comes down to is determining whether or not this was a lawful search. Now, we heard testimony from the officers that stated the reason for the search. We heard multiple avenues that the officers detained all individuals on scene solely on the basis of the 911 call they received. Now, when they got to the scene, they responded to the scene a couple minutes after the call was placed. And when they got there, all they saw was a group of individuals. They didn't see anyone running from the scene. They couldn't recall on the stand whether or not there were individuals in vehicles fleeing from the scene. All they saw was a group of individuals dressed nicely, standing on their property. They didn't see evidence that there was a shooting or that even a firearm was present at the time. All they saw was a group of individuals standing in a circle outside of an apartment complex. Now, again, this detainment and the subsequent frisk and arrest was solely based on this 911 call. Now, a 911 call is not enough to ascertain reasonable suspicion. Now, overall, I'll bring it up since the prosecutor did. Terry v. Ohio was a completely different circumstance. In the case law that was presented, of course, is a different circumstance as well. Reasonable suspicion is generally determined to be an officer's background, training, and knowledge, as well as certain facts and assumptions that they make in time of the scene to ascertain whether or not there is enough evidence to detain an individual, frisk them, etc. Now, in this specific situation, there was not enough evidence to suggest that. A 911 call in and of itself is not enough to stop an individual, nor is it to frisk them for weapons. Now, when the officers got to the scene, they never investigated the scene. Again, they never searched to see if there was evidence of a crime. They never asked questions to the individuals on the scene, whether or not they had firearms on them, or whether or not they saw anyone with a firearm. They never checked to see if any of the individuals were convicted violent felons, or whether or not they even had firearms licenses. These are all ways that the officer could have actually ascertained whether there was a threat of the individuals on scene having firearms. Much less the defendant, who, one, is not a convicted violent felon at the time, and two, did have a firearms license at the time. Now, again, all of this would have allowed the officer to determine whether or not there was enough evidence to frisk the individuals on scene. Now, let's say for a moment that there was enough evidence for the detainment, that the call itself was enough to ascertain reasonable suspicion. Again, I'd like to go back to the definition. An officer must use their background knowledge and training to determine whether or not there is evidence to detain and frisk this individual. We never heard the officers on scene testify to what their background experience and knowledge was. We never heard them testify to what this call could have meant, whether or not they've had previous experiences because of the call, whether or not a person, them receiving a call for a person brandishing a Class 3 firearm meant that that person had a firearm. All of this was based on senseless speculation. And they did not, nor did they testify to specific instances in their background as an officer to them finding individuals, Class 3s, from a 911 call similar. Because of this, there is not enough evidence to say that the officers at the time had reasonable suspicion to search, detain, and frisk, and subsequently search the defendant. In this case, all of the evidence should be suppressed. All charges, without that evidence based on the search, should be dismissed. The defendant should be found not guilty. Thank you, Honor.
Thank you, defense. Thank you, prosecution. We'll be taking a 5-minute recess while I go over my notes, double check the evidence, and come back with a verdict. Thank you.
Thank you, Honor.
Listen, Mikey's still not over his dead wife, alright? Leave him be. Oh, he's over her now? Okay, never mind.
So why you gotta bring that up in court?
Yeah, why you gotta bring up his dead wife who he got a hand in a jar of?
The lady was beheaded and you fucking bring it up in court.
She was actually turned into ashes.
Listen.
Yeah, after
he
she was
coughed up
beheaded.
the hand just for Mikey.
You do a line of that bitch?
You ever
All
heard the
right,
bite of
ladies and
87?
gentlemen, you may be seated. Mr. Francesco, please stay standing. An interesting case today, one that is based solely on Terry v. Ohio in regard to was this a legal frisk and subsequent search of Mr. Michael Francesco. So reasonable suspicion is what Terry versus Ohio is based on, which means is there that any reasonable person would suspect that a crime was in the process of being committed, had been committed, or was going to be committed very soon. As testified by many officers, there were 5 to 6 people standing outside. They were standing by cars. They had no visible guns in their hand when approaching, and no one was fleeing or running from the scene. This is all based on the anonymous 911 call stating that a man was seen in the area with a Class 3 firearm. We also have an officer testifying that he saw Francesco on the phone after coming out of the apartment, and again, not fleeing from the officers, but standing with all of the other individuals there. The officers today did not testify that they asked the individuals for ID, did not question them in a way for their identification. So unless an officer can articulate anything more from what they saw before they did the pat down, like any kind of suspicious behavior, it puts us in a rather obscure predicament. So today, in regard to PC 2302, possession of a Class 2 illegal firearm, and PC 3129, illegal possession of Schedule 2 controlled substances, based today on the frisk and the subsequent search, and from the testimonies we have heard today and the evidence that was brought forward, based specifically on Terry v. Ohio, Mr. Francesco, the court deems that the frisk and subsequent search were not legal, and that today you are found not guilty of those crimes because of the search and the frisk. At this time, that is the verdict. As usual, you have 72 hours if you wish to appeal the decision made by the district court, and court is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you,
Whoever gonna storm out like crazy.
That's cool.
But what the hell?